Urban survival firearms. That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the podcast where we tackle this topic. God willing, many more in the future, the right way, with Almighty God at the center, biblical Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. On that, bio bullet points in the show notes. Military, law enforcement, private security, contracting. More germane to today's topic, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I taught urban warfare for the Marine Corps after my time in combat. I also was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters at a large metropolitan area here in the U.S. Also, I have the unique experience, by God's grace, and lived through it when many other good men did not, by His grace, not because I'm any better than the men that didn't make it, to see the collapse of a culture and a society. I was there, unlike many that came after me, I was there for the initial invasion of Iraq, and I got to see a huge metropolitan area. We think in America of like just New York or Dallas or something, but there are giant metropolitan areas all over the world, Tokyo and, well, not so much Dubai anymore, but you get the idea. Baghdad was such a place. It was a huge metropolitan area, cultural center, a vast quantity of people. And I was there for the initial invasion, and I had the unique opportunity to be there before we started destroying it. I was there even a little bit earlier than a lot of other people during the invasion. And I got to see it as a functioning city, and I got to see it descend into disorder and disruption, and what was a fully modern functioning city with a full grid and everything else just collapse in days, and the chaos that ensued in that. So that's some of the experiences I'm going to draw from for this. With that, let's talk about this. I was just going to talk about some of the best urban survival firearms. I was thinking about that as the episode. And then I got to start recording the episode, and I thought, I can't do that because it's such an amorphous topic. It's such a hard to quantify and define. What do you mean by urban? What do you mean by survival? Like, what's the scenario, right? And I don't know. I don't see the future. This could be something we don't have to deal with in our generation. It could be something our grandkids or great-grandkids have to deal with. But here's a fact that very few times does, what people call science today, which I would say is not true science, but science and history and biblical principles, Christianity, all agree on. The end is coming, right? Civilizations collapse. It's what they do if you look at history. If you look at science, it's a matter of time. If you read your Bible, it's a matter of time. Great tribulation is coming. So what exactly that's going to look like, I don't know, guys. I'm not a prophet. There are pretty strict penalties in the Bible for being a false prophet. I don't pretend to have any insight into the future. I don't know. That's why, again, it's kind of amorphous. Are we talking an economic collapse? Now, are we talking thermonuclear war? Are we talking an actual pandemic, not like a fake pandemic, but like an actual pandemic where, 50%, like the Black Plague of the populations in cities die? Are we talking about the estimates like what happened to the Native Americans where some 90% died from disease? An actual pandemic like that? Is that what we're talking about? Or an EMP, right? Any of your prepper favorite things? I don't know. I don't see the future. I don't know what exactly it's going to look like. That's why it's kind of hard to define. What I would say, and I love guns for all kinds of things, right? I love guns as art. I love guns as for enjoyment, for pleasure. I also an avid competition shooter. But the primary reason that I enjoy guns and have guns in my life is they're tools to me for me as a profession. I'm still a professional. I'm a private security contractor. That's how I, by God's grace, let's just say that's how the primary way to put food on the table. I do the podcast, but the primary way to put food on the table is as a private security contractor. So that, for me, is like a tool of my trade. Like you might have a journeyman electrician or a journeyman carpenter. I'm kind of a journeyman gunfighter, hence the name of the podcast. But from other than that, because that doesn't apply to a lot of people, is they're also a great tool to defend oneself and everybody else, right? Because you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So defending other people, because you should value other people's lives as well as yours. Otherwise, how can you love your neighbor as yourself? So put that whole philosophy thing up there. And then for food procurement, I like being able to feed my family. Like we have been consuming, we've been going through a massive amount of elk lately. And I laid out, talking about my bio a little bit, I've spent time in large metropolitan areas. I was also L.A.P.D. I didn't mention that, but I was also L.A.P.D., which is a large metropolitan area. And although I never saw it collapse, I did see rioting and stuff like that in the city. And dealt with some pretty nasty stuff in Los Angeles, as you might imagine. But I much prefer being out in the country, chasing elk around mountains. I much prefer the country. And I also love using firearms to put meat on the table. Literally, like going out, slaying a beast, putting good high-quality protein in front of myself and my wife, and knowing that God gave me the ability and the time and the talent to do that, because that all comes from God. And I see firearms as a way to do that. So if we look at those two main tasks that firearms do, defense and feeding and food procurement. Both of those things, whatever, the tribulation is going to look like, whatever the collapse of an urban system is going to look like, or just even a slow collapse where just violent crime continues to escalate and go up. Firearms are a useful tool today in major urban areas. Imagine what it would be like post-collapse. Now, food procurement. This is a little bit different in the city. Unless you plan on going like full Haitian and eating cats and dogs in the street or whatever, which, there's a reason I don't live in the city. But food procurement, also a thing. Also, the whole giant debacle of, do you bug in or do you bug out in a disaster? Well, obviously, that depends, right? Here's the easy answer. You do a calculation with the brain that you have and the common sense that you've been given. You do a legit, non-emotional calculation. Which one of those things increases my chances of survival? If staying home increases my chances of survival, then you bug in. If leaving increases your chances of survival, then you bug out. Some people are like, oh, I'll never bug out. Really? There's like people throwing Molotov cocktails and your entire block is going to burn and you're just going to sit there because you're never going to bug out. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? I've literally had to bug out before I had an evacuation order for wildfires. Right? You're going to be like that guy that I forget his name, but he stayed on like Mount St. Helens. He's like, it'll be fine. I don't know. I'm paraphrasing, but he wouldn't leave. He was not going to bug out. And then Mount St. Helens erupted and killed him. I think it's a foolish thing to say, I'll never bug out. You could say, I've got all my stuff here. Unless there's a really compelling reason, I'm not going to leave. But that depends on many factors, right? So you just do a valid calculation with the information you have at the time, right? How violent is the crime? What street gangs are running your city? Do you have food? Can you get food where you are? Can you get clean water where you are? Are things marketably better for your family, yourself, somewhere else? Can you get there safely? You have to calculate all these things at a time. And again, I don't see the future. I certainly am not going to be able to tell you what you should do. You should probably have a plan for both. That also will dictate what survival firearms are going to work best for your scenario. Also, what's your experience? I think this is a sad thing in a lot of American gun culture. People think like, if I have this gun, then I'm good. No, that's like me having a guitar. Guys, I can't play the guitar. The extent of my guitar knowledge is like, there's electric and acoustic, and they have 6 strings, most of them. That's like my extent of knowledge of a guitar. You could give me Jimi Hendrix's guitar and put a gun to my head and tell me to play the national anthem, and I would be dead because I can't play the guitar. Me having the guitar does not help. going back to you and your urban survival firearms, what are you good with? What do you practice with? Because the fact that you have something that you never shoot and practice with, it's like you having that guitar. So whatever you're best with now, whatever you're well versed with now, is your best urban survival firearm. I don't care if it's a Ruger 1022. If that's the only gun you know and the only gun you can run well and practice with, that's probably your go-to urban survival firearm, right? If you've been an avid waterfowl hunter since you were, knee-high to a grasshopper and you've hunted ducks and geese your whole life, and then you moved into the city for a better job, you moved to Nashville, and that's the only gun you're really good with and practice with, if the peanut butter and chocolate hits the fan, that's your best urban survival firearm because that's what you're familiar with. Is it the best on paper? No. Would you be better off with even a different shotgun? Yes, but it's what you have and what you're practiced with and good with, and that makes a bigger difference than something that's better on paper. And I think, again, a lot of Americans, especially in the gun community, have this fallacy that like, oh, I have this thing and on paper it's really good and I own it, ergo I'm basically a rock star with this gun. Even though, I've never taken a training class with it, I've never taken out and put food on the table with it. I think because I have it, ergo, ipso facto, somehow I'm going to be good with this gun, even though I'm not good with it. We're like, instead of Americans, we're like Amazonians because we buy everything on Amazon. Like we think if we have it and we bought it on Amazon, we're good. So is that the best course of action though? No, am I telling you to just, unless you've done the calculations and you think that Ruger 1022 is the best urban survival firearm, if you do, then that's great. And I'm not going to put you down for that. But if you don't think that, is it the best course of action to just stick with the 1022 because it's what you have and you're familiar with? Not unless that's all you can afford and you're trying to feed your family. I would never fault you for that. But probably a better philosophy and course of action is to look at where you live, your demographics, your city, your state that you live in, take all that into account, and then think with the brain you've been given, not with the marketing hype, not with whatever's being put out on TikTok, not with some influencer trying to tell you need a tactical lever action in 4570, but like look at ballistics, look at cartridges, look at, affordability of a platform, affordability of ammo, common ranges where you live, things like that, and then reason for yourself what's a good urban survival firearm for you in your situation, being honest with yourself, and then get good with that one, right? That makes more sense than just being like, well, I'm only good with a duck shotgun, so I'm only good with my goose gun, so that's the only gun I'm going to have and use. That's better than getting some Gucci tactical gun that you never practice with, but probably even better. Let's not strive for the bare minimum, right? If you're striving for the bare minimum, this is probably not the podcast for you. But if you just want me to tell you to buy stuff and you'll be good, check a box, this is probably not the podcast for you. But probably a better philosophy for urban survival firearms is, what do I think, looking at all the options from that Ruger 1022 to a 50 BMG? What are some options? What makes the most sense for me, my personality, what I like practicing with, because a lot of people are going to shoot more with the things they like to shoot. Do I have any hunting experience at all? Because if you don't hunt now, the idea of you just becoming some great hunter when everybody's trying to hunt and feed themselves, maybe not the best course of action. Taking all that into account and reasoning for yourself, what's the best urban survival firearm? And you likely, if you're into guns, you listen to this podcast, unless you're just getting into it, you probably have several guns. Maybe designate what are your go-to, urban survival firearms. Assuming you live in the city, like I don't live in the city, but assuming you do, or you travel to the city or whatever. Now, take a look at that and then put in a little bit of extra effort to practice with those guns and be good with those guns. Make sure they have a good optic, a good zero. Make sure, it's not just a fire extinguisher gun, like break glass in case of emergency. Make sure that you actually take it out and practice with it. Also getting into that bug in versus bug out scenario. It would be great if we had if we could bug out in our vehicle full of gas and just take all our guns and ammo with us. But that's likely not going to happen in a big disaster. If you look at traffic in a city in a normal day, even an average-sized city, say 100,000 people, if you get a mass emergency where people are panicking, you get a couple of accidents on the major roads, it's likely you're not going to get out of that city. You know, if you're anywhere, I would not count on it. It'd be great if you do. But, and my advice on that is it's better to bug out a year too early than 1 minute too late. But I would also have, getting back to the guns thing, I would also have like a priority of guns. Like I'm blessed to have a lot of really nice guns. I don't consider myself a gun collector so much, but I do have some really nice guns. More than I can carry, more than my wife and I can carry. And if you actually care about survival and not just collecting cool stuff and dying with all your cool stuff in a bunker, if you care about survival and you have to leave, you're only going to, if you have to do a man-portable system and you have to carry all the other stuff necessary for survival, bugging out on foot, and even if you bug out in a vehicle, you should have a plan that if something happens to the vehicle, you're still going to survive and go on foot. So just plan for, worst case scenario, a man-portable system. So for that, you're probably limited to, if it's just you, you're probably limited to a handgun and a long gun, right? You are probably limited to a handgun and a long gun. So pick one handgun and one long gun. And if something really bad happens, maybe I grab a bunch of stuff and put it in the truck. But if I'm down to just that, a handgun and a long gun with my pack, this is going to be that gun. This is going to be that handgun, and this is going to be that long gun. And then factor all that in. That's also likely going to be dependent on where you're bugging out to. Right? If you have to flee, like where are you going? Are you staying in a semi-urban, suburban environment? Like, are you staying east of the Mississippi? Because I would submit east of the Mississippi from Florida to halfway up through Maine is one giant city to me. That's especially when most people start fleeing the city centers and going out into the hinterlands. It's all going to be one giant suburb, basically. So if you're staying in that area, what firearm is best for that? If you think you're going to be running around hunting deer to feed yourself in that scenario, look at the number of deer, and then look at the number of people, and then look at how many deer it takes to feed a person if that's the main thing they're eating. And you'll quickly realize that's just silly survival math. It's just a fantasy. It's like thinking that, reading some prepper novel and thinking that if you have a bug out bag, women are going to throw themselves on you because you're such a genius. Like, get back to reality. Where are you going? Where are you bugging out to? And and again, nobody sees the future, but what do you anticipate things being like? And what would be a good firearm for that scenario if you have to go down to a handgun and a long gun? There is that whole argument that, don't even bring a handgun. And I was a Marine. I also served in the Army, but I know that, a lot of people only have a rifle in the military, and so the argument is don't even carry a handgun, just carry the long gun and have extra ammo, because that's better for your weight and all that stuff, but I disagree. It's probably not going to be a John Wick movie with a one long-running gun battle at the end of the world. You're going to have a lot of periods of time where not much is going on, just like in war. Like, you would think, because you've watched, I don't know, if you haven't been to war, you think oh, I've seen Saving Private Ryan. It's basically just action, action, action with a few interludes in between. But actual war, in my experience, and I can only speak to the war that I fought in, the global war on terror, it's moments of intense, heart-pounding action, and then sometimes months of boredom and monotony and menial tasks. I would submit in a disaster, much of that, the same thing. In Baghdad, stuff's collapsing. People are killing each other in the streets. Well, guess what? You still got to get clean food. You still got to get clean water. You still got to worry about trade, this thing for that thing. A lot of other daily tasks still have to go on. Where are you going to go to the bathroom? How are you going to figure that out on a large scale? All that stuff still has to go on. And I would submit a handgun is really nice for stuff like that. There's a reason we carry handguns today. There's a reason. Handguns are almost never better for fighting than a long gun. I say almost, but a vast majority of the time. And I love handguns, and I do most of my competition shooting with a handgun. And I love handguns. I love them because they're difficult. I love them because they're a challenge. But just because I love them doesn't mean they're better, right? If you told me I'm getting in a gunfight today, there's almost no scenario where I'd pick a handgun over a long gun. I might debate whether I want a rifle or a shotgun, but I'm probably not bringing a handgun to that fight if I know that it's coming. But it's pretty hard to do my daily tasks with a rifle all the time. So it's nice to have that handgun. It also, you might be in an environment, even, post-disaster, where it's frowned upon that you walk around with a rifle. Just like concealed carry is a thing today, and you might not want people to know that you're armed, there may be certain scenarios where you might want that in the future. So I would submit probably a handgun and a long gun. Start thinking about a handgun and a long gun is a good course of action. I've avoided specifically, and I've wanted to, I mentioned like the 1022, but I've avoided specifically talking about different makes and models and different philosophies, battle rifle versus assault rifle versus, this handgun, semi-auto versus revolver. I might do a follow-up episode on that to this. I wanted this to mostly be philosophy and how you should think about it, because I'm not here to tell you, buy this new model that's out, and all the, YouTube glitterati are telling you to get it, and I'm telling you to get it too. I'm not doing that. You think about it for yourself and where you live and what kind of shooting you're familiar with and what you're going to practice with and what kind of food is available in your area, what the climate is, all that stuff. Start thinking about that and think about, hopefully this never happens to us, right? But if it does, what would be a wise choice? How about a couple of different options? What would be the best of what I have right now? Is that a really good option, or should I start thinking about getting a better go-to survival firearm? And what would that optimal choice be for where I live now, where I work now, and where I might be going to? Handgun and a long gun. Hey, this one's one I would love to get your comments on, guys. So, like, subscribe, leave a review. In fact, I'm going to, God willing, do a post right after this on Patreon. Now, a lot of stuff on Patreon, you have to pay. If you want to become a patron, go ahead. But for this, I just want to do a post so you can scroll back through, and I'm going to try and remember to make it free so you can go and just comment so I can get your comments. Because, like, the hosts that I have, they rip these and put them on YouTube. I stay off of YouTube, guys. I try my best to stay off of YouTube. I'm not hanging out watching YouTube. I know that my podcast gets posted there, but if you comment on there, I'm who knows if and when I'll ever see it. So go to Patreon. I'm not asking you to spend any money unless you want to become a patron. But I'm going to put a post on there like urban survival firearms. And I would love to hear your comments on what is your go-to handgun and long gun. I would love to hear your combos. So again, go to Patreon. There should be a link in the show notes. Check it out. Scroll through. There should be a free post on there entitled like Urban Survival Firearms. If I get enough of those comments, maybe I'll do a whole episode on just what you guys would pick and me talking about them and commenting on them. And if you would like me to do follow-ups on this Urban Survival Firearms thing and actually talk about specific platforms, I can actually see like the interactions and stuff that I get with the podcast. So make this an interactive episode. Like, subscribe, leave a review, all that stuff. And again, if you want to, go check out Patreon. Your tactical tip of the day. Maps. Paper maps. I know we live in a world of cell phones, and we live in a world of, Onyx Hunt apps, and we live in a world of like GPS on your phone, Google Maps or whatever. But just pretend. Let's pick this random EMP one. The grid will likely go down in many scenarios. But let's just picture every screen, cell phone, anything else, electronic just goes blank. If you live in an urban, suburban environment, can you navigate? And not the way you normally go, because let's assume you normally take a freeway or a major road. Let's assume all those are blocked, but you still might be able to get there on secondary roads. Having a map in your vehicle, like we all did, pre-cell phone era, that you can still do that, right? You can still get a Thomas guide. If you don't know what a Thomas guide is, way back when I was L.A.P.D, right, we had Thomas guides before there was all these electronic phone GPS things. It was a giant book with different maps of different sections of the city, and you'd have like a grid, and you'd look up alphabetically, like Like you would go into the library and look up a street name and look up a block number, and you could navigate that way. And it actually worked, believe it or not, before digital stuff. We could find our way around the entire city of Los Angeles, as big as that is. And probably right now you could probably go on eBay or somewhere and find an old Thomas guide of your city. So most of the streets are probably going to be the same. But even just a regular folding paper map, have an analog, have a backup of where you live. And then obviously from where you live to where you're going to, probably keep those in your car. So that's your tactical tip of the day. Have paper. Maybe common sense to some of us older generations, but to the newer ones, it may be like a revelation. Like, wow, there's paper maps. Yep, sure is. That's your tactical tip of the day. Your tactical verse of the day. Revelation 18. Come out of her, my people. You know the best bug out is to already be bugged out. Already be out of that nasty city. But more than just physically, because physical is not the most important thing. You could live a long, long life, live to be 120 and die to go to hell. And you kind of missed it. Come out of her spiritually. Or you could be out in the middle of the country and looking at stuff you probably shouldn't be looking at on your phone. You're still in the sin soup, as it were. So come out of her, my comments, come out of her spiritually and physically. Give that some thought. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.